Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call it Near-Death Experiences and the Peace That Surpasses All Understanding. Has to do with a question someone asked, and the question is, when people report near-death experiences, they often talk about becoming one with everything and a peace that surpasses all understanding. It seems like they experience exactly what the Course, referring to A Course in Miracles, talks about. Can you speak on this at all? Thank you. Okay, first of all, let's not take the peace that surpasses all understanding and turn it into something mystical or far to reach, because this is, I think, the confusion here. I'm going to read a bit of A Course in Miracles when it talks the difference between revelation and miracles. And it says, revelation induces complete but temporary suspension of doubt and fear, meaning there's no identification with the mind, with the content of the mind, and you have a taste of what it's like when there's just oneness, beingness, so to speak. But it's temporary, because if you could hold on to that experience for long, the body and everything would disappear. Now, some people may have had that experience as a consequence of a near-death experience, but other people also had that experience without having to have a near-death experience. It's like for a moment the mind drops and they just are just one with everything, and this, in a way, what happened is that for that moment the me disappeared. That's pretty much more like a better description. It's not like I had the experience, but the sense of me, the idea of a me disappears, dissipates, and all that there is what is. The miracle, on the other hand, which the Course talks about, it says, miracles, however, are genuinely interpersonal and result in true closeness with others. So revelations unite you directly with God. Miracles unite you directly with your brother. In other words, a revelation is, again, when everything drops and you feel that oneness we're speaking of. But a miracle, on the other hand, is when the judgment is dropped and you feel the closeness with your brother. That's why there's a beautiful line in the Course that says, the holiest of all spots on earth is where an ancient hatred has become a present love. So we're not striving to become one with God. We're simply allowing the mind to be healed from all its judgments so we can experience the closeness with all of our brothers and sisters, because in the end, because there's only one, put it this way, so all the brothers and sisters seems to be different expressions of that one, and we are that one. So on a very practical level, what the Course is pointing to, according to my understanding and my practice, is if I don't identify with the content of the mind, I have the experience of what is referred to as the peace that surpasses all understanding. Now, there's many places on the Course in Miracles that it points of how you do that, or how can that be done, and it's very simple. All I need to do is drop my identification with the content of the mind, and the consequence of that is, once again, the lack of judgment, the peace that surpasses all understanding, and that is something that can be experienced while we seem to have this particular experience as human beings. Again, don't try to turn this into something esoteric that is so far-reached, so I have to be one with everything. No, you probably, some people will never have the experience of being one with everything. But they can live a life that is filled with the peace that surpasses all understanding. So I'll quote some of the ways in which the Course suggests you can have access to that experience. One is from chapter 4, when it says, if you're willing to renounce the role of guardian of your thought system and open it to me, I will correct it very gently and lead you back to God. It's another way of saying, if you recognize that you know absolutely nothing, if you just simply drop completely whatever you think you know, then The love that you are is doing the correction, and the direct experience of that correction is blah, the peace that surpasses all understanding. Another one is when it says, when your peace is threatened or disturbed in any way, say to yourself, I do not know what anything, including this, means, and so I do not know how to respond to it, and I will not use my own past learning as the light to guide me now. Same thing, different words. If I just recognize that I know nothing, I do not allow my past learning, my conditioning, my thoughts, my beliefs to interfere, and the correction takes place on its own. It's not something you do, it's the nature of being, and that's the peace that surpasses all understanding. We can go, for example, to lesson 23 when it says, the idea for today introduces the thought that you are not trapped in the world you see because its cause can be changed. The cause is thought. And remember, the Course is speaking to the mind that is dreaming the dream, not the individual. We are not causing this world, but that which supposedly projects all this is causing all of this. It continues. This change requires, first, that the cause be identified and then let go so that it can be replaced. What is the cause? The thought. If you believe the thought, that's the cause. So when the thought comes up and the judgment comes up, what you see, remember in that moment, I don't know the meaning of anything, is dropped. That is what needs to take place, and that's it. That's why I keep referring all the time in the videos. What remains when you don't identify with the content of the mind? What remains is what is, and that is very practical. It's not the isness in a sense that you disappear, no. It's the isness of the peace that surpasses all understanding. He continues. The first two steps in this process require your cooperation. That implies the willingness of recognize that I know absolutely nothing and therefore I just drop. So the first two steps are practically, they're simultaneously. Right now, if you don't identify with the content of the mind, you are doing the first two steps. Because the first one would be saying that there's a thought appearing that is suggesting something, and the second one says just drop it. Well, once again, if you don't identify with the content of the mind, you see the two steps are right there simultaneously. And what happens in that moment, you experience the peace that surpasses all understanding. That is what is referred to as the correction, and you don't do that. You see, that's what it says. The first two steps in this process requires your cooperation. The final one does not. The images have already been replaced. By taking the first two steps, you will see that this is so. The images have been replaced by what? Not by other images that you're creating or projecting, by the peace that is already there when you're not identified with the content of the mind. You see? Another is a lesson 189 when it says, simply do this. Be still and lay aside all thoughts of what you are and what God is. All concepts that have learned about the world. All images you hold about yourself. Empty your mind of everything it thinks is either true or false or good or bad, of every thought it judges worthy and all the ideas of which it is ashamed. Hold on to nothing. Do not bring with you one thought the past has taught, nor one belief you have learned from anything. Forget this world, forget this course, and come with wholly empty hands unto your God. You see? Doing the same thing. Just forget everything you think you know. Just put it right there. That's it. And in that willingness, then you experience the peace that surpasses all understanding, which is happening right now. And if you look at forgiveness, if you're using the Course in Miracles language, it says forgiveness, on the other hand, is still and quietly does nothing. It offends no aspect of reality, nor seeks to twist it to appearances it likes. It merely looks and waits and judges not. Everything I have said here with so many different words can be reduced by the famous psalm from the Bible, "Be still and know that I am God." So right now, if you don't identify with the content of the mind, if you don't believe the content of the mind right this moment, if you don't believe any thoughts, what remains? That's the peace that surpasses all understanding. You see? Very practical, very ordinary, but don't turn it into something esoteric like you have to be one with everything, because when you do that, all of a sudden you try to make the simplicity of this obscured by all this mystical experience. Now, let's talk a little bit about near-death experiences and mystical experiences and so on, and don't make the simple complicated. Some people may claim that they may have some sort of experiences. I am not here in denial or discarding any of that. But the problem is that whether someone had that experience or not, these are thoughts that are appearing in the present moment experience. We're dealing with these videos with what is practical, meaning what is real to you. What is your experience right now? Your experience is that you're being. And that is direct experience. Some may have had some sort of an experience, call it near death or mystical or something. But now they're here in the present moment dealing with their life as it's unfolding, and that thought is just a thought. That experience is just a thought, it's an experience. It's not the reality we're pointing to here. You see? The reality, capital R, is once again the oneness that we are. The experience we're having, on the other hand, is that this world seems to be real to us, and there's a way of living in the world, like lesson 155 would suggest. There's a way of living in the world that is not of it. You see? You don't change appearances, but you smile more often. That's the practicality of my understanding and where the pointing of the teachings of the Course in Miracles are pointing to. You see? There's no mysticism around this. Because now I'm going to ask you this. Let's say you had one of those revelations. Again, it could happen. Why not? But this is not something you're trying to seek. Forget about that. That's just very spontaneous. If it happens, great. Be thankful that it happened to you and leave it alone. Because then the mind turns it into the new thing to pursue, and then you still feeding the sense of identity, the seeker that now is trying to have some sort of a specific or special experience. So let's say you had one of those experiences. That's fine. That is just a thought. Now, what is the difference between that quote-unquote mystical experience or that thought and the thought of you learning how to ride a bicycle when you're, let's say, 13 years old? What's the difference? The answer is none. So, okay, somebody had a particular experience, had a taste of something wonderful, but that thought is no different than the thought of having learned how to ride a bike when you were 12, or the thoughts of whatever might have happened yesterday or a moment ago. It doesn't matter, because these are thoughts, you see. But if you take the thought of this particular near-death experience and you turn it into something special, what you're doing without realizing is that now you're somehow trying to make believe that that sequence, that event is very important. It's something that is, I don't know, something, whatever you want to call it, overlooking that all you're doing is reinforcing the belief in a you who seemed to have had an experience. You see? So we are not engaging, at least with these videos, I am not engaging in past or future or any particular experience I might have had. I'm just dealing with what's happening right now. And what's happening or seems to be happening right now is that this present moment experience, if I don't believe the content of the mind, I can experience the peace where the Course or the Bible or whatever philosophy that points to truth is pointing to right now. And that is very practical, it's very ordinary. I remember an old question that used to say, what is heavier, a pound of lead or a pound of leaves? See how the mind immediately begins to, well, lead is heavy and leaves can the wind blows them, so must be a pound of lead, overlooking the key word, which is pound. So what is heavier, a pound of lead or a pound of leaves? Well, the truth is that they're both the same weight. You may need a lot of more leaves, of course, but they're both weight a pound. So once again, if you take this mystical experience, whatever you want to call it, near death or something, and you think that that particular experience is something special or whatever the case may be, meaning the thought of that experience, and you take the thought of running a bicycle learning how to ride a bike when you're 13, the mind immediately makes the thought of the mystical experience something more important, whatever, and it takes the thought of learning how to ride a bike and discard it. But you're forgetting that whether one takes the form of a mystical experience and the other one takes the form of learning how to ride a bike, what do they both have in common? They are a thought. See? The pound of lead and a pound of leaves, the key word is pound. Well, the thought of having a mystical experience and the thought of learning how to ride a bike, the key word is thought. See? So, once again, all we're doing here is not discrediting whatever experience some may have. We're just simply pointing to what is. And right now, if you don't identify with the content of the mind, or I say if there's no identification with the content of the mind, what remains? What remains is, in my understanding and my practice, again, where the Course in Miracles and every philosophy is pointing to, and that is the peace that surpasses all understanding, and that's very practical, it's very ordinary. All we have to remember is, don't believe anything I think. See? Now, just remember that these videos are paradoxical, because in the end, you will not believe everything you think because I'm saying so. You will not believe whatever you think because that is what happens through you, because you're not the doer. And like I always say, life created this seeming projection in which there's a me sharing an information and there seems to be a you receiving it, suggesting that you have the capacity of not identify with the content of the mind. So the way I look at it is that act as if you have the capacity of not identify with the content of the mind, while at the same time you know that in the end that is something that happens through you, it's not something that you do. I don't have any conflict with that. I just know that life is expressing through this instrument, shares this information, and it seems as though I have the capacity to put it into practice. Well, and so are you. That's why life presents again this seeming appearance, because in the end it's life reminding itself the truth of what is. And again, that is beyond words, and we don't have to just go there. Let's go once again to the simplicity, to the practicality. And the practicality is that if you don't believe the content of the mind, you get to experience the peace that surpasses all understanding, in spite or whether you do have one of those mystical experiences, call it a revelation, or if you never had any of them, it doesn't matter. In the end, if you don't believe the content of the mind, you are experiencing the famous peace that surpasses all understanding, while you seem to have the experience of being in a body. And well, this is inspiration that came through. I hope it served, and I hope it actually answered your question. And as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.